It's my pleasure to introduce retired Rear Admiral Dennis Moynihan, who will serve as our presenter. First, a big thank you to the Admiral for joining us. Rear Admiral Dennis Moynihan was the U.S. Navy's Chief of Information from 2009 to 2012, serving as principal spokesman for the Department of the Navy and providing strategic communication counsel to the Secretary of the Navy and the Chief of Naval Operations. He led the Navy's public affairs community of more than 2,500 communication professionals. Then he began his first public affairs assignment in 1993 and served in progressively responsible roles on land and at sea throughout his Navy career. Upon retirement from the Navy, Denny initially joined Hess Corporation, then later Quest Diagnostics. He's currently a partner at F-32 Partners, specializing in communication leadership. Rear Admiral Moynihan is a 1986 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He earned master's degrees from the University of Oklahoma and the National War College, and Denny's two children followed his footsteps into service via the Naval Academy. And with that, I will hand things over to you, Denny.
Thank you, Margaret, and welcome everybody to this afternoon's webinar. Glad you could make it. I just want to share a little bit about Margaret. I'm sure a few of you or many of you know Margaret. She's everything that you just witnessed. She's buttoned up, she's thoughtful, she's engaging. She's also really tough behind the scenes. And so when she reached out to me a couple weeks ago, she said, "Hey, can you talk about leadership? And I don't want you to talk at 30,000 feet and give us any of that leadership mumbo jumbo. I really need you to talk about things that anybody who goes to this webinar can actually use." So, Margaret, thanks for that guidance. And that's exactly what I'm going to try to do over these next 30 or 40 minutes. So why me? Who am I? As Margaret said, a former Navy admiral. I served for 26 years. Um, some of the best years of my life. In my last role, I was the head of communications for the Navy. And then after that, about 12 to 13 years in the corporate world. And there's a picture of an amazing team at Quest Diagnostics when we were at the New York Stock Exchange. I did that until just about 6 or 9 months ago. Um, right now, I'm living in Annapolis, Maryland, and my family's down there. The picture in the upper right is me and my wife and our son Dennis. We're on the field at a bowl game in December when Navy played Oklahoma. Not pictured as my daughter. She decided to go to Nevada instead of go to a bowl game, so she's not pictured there. Also, I'm an educator now at Cornell, facilitating leadership and communication courses, and also work with someone who many of you may know, Joe Schaefer, as a partner at F-32. Those might be a few of the reasons that you may listen or care. But I also want to give you another reason. Um, through all of my experiences, both in the military and in the corporate world, and even as a parent, um, something really resonated with me. And I don't know if you've ever seen the musical Dear Evan Hansen. It was on Broadway. They made a movie of it, and Margaret says that it's playing this weekend at the State Theater in New Brunswick for any of you who are interested. But um, if you haven't seen the musical, it's a story about a young man. He's on the left there. Um, and he's an anxious man, and he's a young boy, and he's trying to figure it out being an adult, and his mother is anxious, and just like all parents wants the best for Evan. And the musical starts in the kitchen, and it's the first day of school. And you can tell that Evan is nervous, and you can tell that the mom is even more nervous and more anxious. And the opening score of the musical is a song called "Anybody Have a Map?" And I want to read you the lyrics because I felt this way a lot in many leadership situations that I've been in. The refrain is, "Does anybody have a map? And maybe happen to know how the hell to do this? I don't know if you can tell, but this is me just pretending to know. So where's the map? I need a clue because the scary truth is I'm flying blind and I'm making this up as I go. And when I was there in at Times Square and Broadway watching the movie, I wish I had sunglasses on. I wish I put my hat on because it got me really emotional because I've been in that situation, maybe not in the kitchen table, but starting a big job or approaching a big situation. And so what I tried to do is find a map for me. And so what I'm going to talk to you about are some things that have helped me along the way in my leadership journey, and they may help you. So when I'm not working for Margaret, I do work for F32 Partners. We're a business consulting team, and we help people and leaders optimize their performance. Um, and as before I do get started, I came up with these four R's and an M on my own. But when I ran this idea by somebody, they said, "Wow, that's really good." But you know that those are the four R's are the core values of the Rutgers Business School. And I didn't know that, but I know that now. But I want you all to know that there was no intent to play to the home crowd. It just sort of worked out that way. Um, and one more proviso before I get started. Um, these are some things that worked for me. Um, and I use them every day. They may work for you or they may not work for you. I don't think there's any single path to becoming a successful leader. Um, some of this may work for you, some of it may not. The only thing that I would say is over the next few minutes or so, just consider them and see what's worth trying to incorporate in your own leadership journey and hope that will help because I don't think there's just any one way to do it. So if I had to put it on one page, here it is. What I have found, my map, the things that help get me to be my best as a leader um, are reading, reaching, resting, reflecting, and moving. And I'll spend a few minutes on each of those. So the first is reading, and every slide will follow the same format where some graphics will be on the right side, and then some facts, some citations will be on the left. I thought the citations were important because um, I want you to just know that I'm just not making this stuff up. There are other people and there's other science that support some of these suggestions. So the first is reading. The Journal of Applied Psychology says that it enhances your empathy and social perception. Um, Reading actually helps us become more effective communicators. And there's also studies that show that it can help you reduce your stress. So, what should you read? What I read is there's four things that I read every day before I start my day. Um, two of them are pictured up top. The first is the Daily Stoic. The second is a Calendar of Wisdom by Leo Tolstoy. The third is the Daily Dad. And then the fourth that I read every day is it's a book called The Laws of Power. And so there's one passage a day on how to handle different situations. So those are some things that I read on a daily basis before I start my day. Before I meet with anybody, it's the first thing I'll do is um, try to fuel my thinking with positive thoughts, ways to approach problems, and ways to approach my day. There's also other books that I'll read, either driving, I'll listen to books, or at night. Um, and again, if you're looking for suggestions on where to get started, I just finished a great one called What You're Made For. It's by George Raveling, a former college basketball coach turned business executive at Nike, and The Five Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom. What should you read? Anything. Anything that gets um, your creative juices flowing. I think there's a lot that can be gained from sitting down and reading. The next is reflecting. And again, HBS says it improves your job performance. Dr. Gail Matthews says people who write down their goals are more successful and likely to achieve them than people who don't. And then the University of Texas said that it helps regulate emotions and it reduces stress and anxiety. And that study reminded me of President Lincoln. And back during the Civil War, um, he would write a lot of letters, and he would write them to his cabinet. He would write them to his generals who were out in the field. And a lot of them he would send, and there were many others that he wouldn't. And when he was writing these letters, he would express some of his impatience, some of his frustrations, but he would write these things down. Some of them would be sent, others would remain in his top right-hand drawer. Um, so I think President Lincoln might agree that writing things down, reflecting, is a great way to reduce stress and anxiety. What could work for you? Index cards, they can work. You can get a nice moleskin journal and do it that way. Or you can do it digitally, which is the way that seemed to work for me. I tried all of them, and what I found was in one place I can read on my Kindle and then I can journal in my day one journal. Um, it really helps me organize my thoughts before I approach my day. I do it at the beginning of the day. Others advocate you can do it at the end of the day. And so, um, what is it that you reflect on? There's a lot of schools of thought on how to do it. Um, I tried one technique, which was to set a timer and just write for 20 minutes and don't stop writing until the timer sounds. And that's one way to do it. And I found some value. I couldn't sustain that. So what I do is every day I start with gratitude and I come up with 3 reasons why I'm grateful for the day that's about to happen. And what I found is that if I start with gratitude, it's really hard for anxiety or negative thoughts to come into play because gratitude seems to crowd everything out. And then once you start there and once you think of all the reasons that you're thankful for what's about to happen, it's really hard to sort of get in your own way. Um, and then after gratitude, there's 3 questions I ask myself. What do I need to do? How do I need to think or approach my day? And then what do I need to do to improve on either what I've done in the past, what I did yesterday? So I write down gratitude and then do, think, and improve. And again, it helps me get started. Um, the the benefits of using an electronic journal is I can look back easily and I can see what I did um, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and you can sort of spot trends. Um, what might be stressful periods of the year for you, what might be stressful events if you have annual events that come up at work. What I found was there were times of the year where I got stressful. So I've seen these situations before, so I shouldn't be as anxious as I might think I am because I've been through this before. So I found that going back sort of helps me put things into context and helps me get going in a positive direction. The third is R, reach, and it's short for reaching out. Again, the stats are there. Um, I really like that third stat. Harvard University has this amazing longitudinal study going on happiness, and what they found are close relationships are the number one factor in happiness and satisfaction. So how do you do it? We're all busy. What are some of the ways that you can reach out every day and maintain your networks and your friendships and your connections? Um, I try to do one of 3 things every day. Um, I will send a text to somebody. There's a person that I hadn't talked to in about a month and a half. And so yesterday, um, I know this person's running for office in a local area that he lives in, and we just said, "Hey, how are you? How have you been? How's the election going? Hope you're doing well. Let's connect at your convenience." Um, there's an email that you can send to somebody that you haven't connected with in a while. LinkedIn can be a great source of reaching out to contacts that you have. So there's use of electronic devices to help you connect. If you're in a work environment, where do you go and eat lunch? Where do you go and get water? Where do you go and get coffee? Just spending 1 or 2 extra minutes at the water fountain or the coffee machine, or at lunch, connecting with other people, seeing how they're doing. It it really matters. Um, Another technique is, as you build and as you build your network, making commitments to people. I found is really important. Um, what tends to get done is what we schedule, and so there are two very important people in my life who um, we regularly communicate on a weekly basis, and I put it down on my calendar. So uh, Monday at 07:45, I have a meeting with a call with Chris, and then Thursdays at 7 in the morning, I have a call with Joe. And those are commitments that we make to each other, um, to check in on each other, to see how we're doing, and to get advice and counsel on how to approach different situations um, as we go through the things we're going through as business people, as parents, as friends. So I can't underscore enough the importance of making intentional movements to reaching out. If you're not intentional about it, it may not get done because you're going to get so caught up in the rush of the things that we're asked to do on a daily basis. Rest. There's plenty of steps, or there's plenty of studies that underscore the importance of rest. I think it wasn't that long ago where we used to take it as a source of courage or pride that we didn't need much sleep. Um, I think there's a lot of science that's coming out that's emphasizing the importance of getting rest. There's a lot of ways that you can monitor it. There are on our watches, on our Apple watches, Garmin watches. There's activity trackers and stress trackers like Whoop, that can help you track how you're resting and how you're preparing for the next day. Um, I found that if today's Friday, I thought about this yesterday afternoon, that as I was heading into the end of Thursday, I was really beginning to prepare for Friday. I had to be very mindful of what I ate, and then I had to be very mindful of when I went to sleep, so that when today came, I could give it my best shot, and I could give the people that I'm going to work with my best shot. Um, and for me, that comes through rest. I didn't appreciate when I was younger, how much time our brain needs to process what we've been through the day before, and how it needs to prepare to help us be at our best for the coming day. So um, don't be one of those people who I grew up with who prided themselves on getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep. If you can get the rest, take advantage of it. I think you'll find that it'll help you become a better leader. And then finally, movement. Again, it's sort of like rest. There's a ton of science out there that supports um, the notion of the power of movement, and not only what it does for our bodies, but also the connection that's made between the body and the mind. Um, it enhances memory and learning by 20%. It certainly reduces stress. And the World Health Organization says that active employees are 15% more productive than employees who are not active. The biggest impediment here, I think, to those who don't use this as a daily practice is how do I get started? Um, and movement doesn't mean you have to start training for an ultra marathon or a marathon or you've got to lift 400 pounds. It just means you have to start moving. And so maybe that's a walk around the block. Maybe that's instead of a stand-up meeting, one-on-one meeting with a colleague, maybe that's a walk outside. Maybe that's yoga. Maybe that's basketball with your kids or a game of catch with your kids. Whatever it is, the power of movement, I think, helps us become more creative, and I think it helps make us become better leaders. Actually, the idea for this presentation um, came when I was on a run, and I don't think that was instance. A lot of good ideas, I think, can come when we're stepping away from our sedentary environment and we're activating our bodies and we're moving. So think about that as the M in this 4 R's and an M. So that's a lot. 4 R's and one M. And I know what you're thinking. I don't, I can't do it all. Or I can't do one of them. Or, oh my gosh, maybe some of you are thinking, well, this is great. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go buy new running sneakers. I'm going to go buy a journal. I'm going to go buy 12 books and I'm going to reach out on LinkedIn. I'm going to go LinkedIn Premium. Um, I, Another good book I just recently read was this Meditation for Mortals by Oliver Berkman. Really good book. I've added it to my daily things that I'm reading. It's just a piece of it every day. But I thought of this presentation when I was reading the book, and what he says essentially is believe in the power of daily-ish, and it's really about giving yourself a break, and it requires sacrificing your fantasies of perfection in favor of the uncomfortable experience of making concrete, imperfect progress here and now. So what that meant to me when I read it was like, just get started. So you may not have a journal. That's okay. Put it on an index card. Um, Maybe tonight you just go to the end of your block. Maybe you pick up a book that's on your library. Just try doing one thing today or tomorrow, and then try to do it again the next day and see what happens. And if Sunday is a big family day, or if work gets in the way Monday and you're not able to do any of the 4 R's or one of the M's, give yourself some grace and just try to do it again. And a funny thing will happen if you can start stacking one day upon another day upon another day. It'll start to become a habit. It'll start to become part of your daily routine, and then you'll have a map. But if you miss a day, it's not the end of the world. Just give yourself a chance to establish that habit and that routine that works for you. Um, and so you might say, I don't have time for any of this. I'm busy. And look, I know we're all busy. Um, but start to ask yourself some questions. As Seneca says, it's not because things are difficult that we dare not that venture, it's because we dare not venture that they are difficult. So um, I'm so bit. Let's use reading. I'm so busy I can't read. Um, well, do you have a commute? And maybe it's listening to books. Or what is your routine at the end of the night? Um, do we need to watch every game of the Sweet 16 this weekend? Or is there 30 minutes that we could use to either go on a workout or read or reflect? So consider the trade-offs that might be in your life, the space that you have that you might consider um, for making room for at least one of these habits to to make you become a better leader and give yourself that map. So that's it. Leadership is hard, but I also think it's a solemn responsibility. Um, when you get closer to the end than the beginning, um, I think what might come into focus for you is the importance of the people that you're able to impact and help more so than the things that you're able to accomplish. And to do that, it requires you to be at your absolute best every single day. So I hope that you might have found one thing in that presentation to sort of help you be at your best. Um, and I'm really grateful for your time. And Margaret, I'm happy to take any questions that are there.
Thank you, Danny. Very, very insightful and helpful. I can see some questions coming in both the Q&A and the chat. If people have the opportunity to put their questions into the Q&A, it's a lot easier to manage there in both the live environment, and then later I get some reporting that makes it a little bit easier too to make sure we addressed all of the questions. So if you happen to have the opportunity to put it there, I know if you're on a mobile device that might not be possible, but if you can, we'd appreciate that. So the very first question that came in was, can you speak to what it means to be a leader in your personal life, social life, family life, spiritual life? Are there common components or are all different?
I think there are a couple things that are universal across all of those domains. And um, when I think about leadership, you you can find 1,000 definitions of leadership. The best one that I've ever heard is that a leader is someone who makes people or situations better. And so I've adopted that framework of as what it means to be a good leader. So in my social life, my family life, my bonds outside of myself, I try to say to myself, did I make someone else better or did I make a situation better? And then the personal life thing, how I try to get at that is I try every day to make sure that what I say is perfectly aligned with what I do. And if I have alignment there, then I'm off to a good start. And then I can try to help other people. But it starts with me, it starts with us first as leaders, before we're able to help anybody else. Reminds me of that metaphor when you get on a plane, as the flight attendants used to say, in case of emergency, in case of an emergency, put on your mask first before you attempt to help others. We've got to get ourselves right before we get others, before we're ever able to help others. So aligning the say with the do is the best way that I know how. So thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I like that expression, aligning the say with the do. Um, I had a question that came to me that I'll just reiterate that we are recording this session. We'll make that available to everyone afterward. We'll send it out, a link to all of you via email. So for everyone who is interested in revisiting some of the notes on the slides and things like that, you'll get to see them in the context of the recording. But the next question that came for you, there's a little bit of comment in it too, so I'm going to read the whole thing. Um, Thank you for the guidance you've provided on being mindful in our approach to leadership on a regular basis. You mentioned that at times you look back on trends from years ago to see that you've been there before. When situations are difficult, have you found any examples of activities, thoughts, or mental approaches that help you recenter to get back into your groove?
Yes. Um, when I have faced those situations and when I know I'm in the moment and it's hard, um, there's a mantra that I use and it goes like this. It's this is happening and I'm doing the best I can. And if you can acknowledge to yourself that something's happening and you can say to yourself that you're doing the best you can, that's all you can ask of yourself. So when the heat is on, when something big is happening and people are counting on me and I don't know if I can do it, I say to myself, this is happening and I'm doing the best I can. And if I can keep doing that moment by moment, I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to do the best I can. I hope that helps.
That's great. Our next question comes from, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this correctly, from a fellow Annapolitan, an Annapolis resident, I'm guessing that means. Um, and Corey asks, how did your career in the Navy prepare you for the corporate world? What was the most difficult part of that transition?
I think there are more parallels between the military world and the corporate world than one might think. Um, the things that were valued in the military, hard work, being a good teammate, being dependable. I think those were valued in uniform, and I think that they're also valued in corporate America. And to anybody who's transitioning, I'm happy to help anybody because there are so many people that have helped us who have previously transitioned. We're happy to help you. So Corey, if that's you, um, please let me know. Um, the most difficult part of the transition is um, if you're coming from a military culture, like we're big on plans and we're big on timelines, and you may have your own timeline in mind, and you may have your idea of what sector you're going to transition into. But the corporate world may have its own ideas and its own timelines. So a book that I dog-eared the pages on when I made my transition is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Um, there were so many jobs that I thought I'd be a perfect fit for. And so many times when I thought I was going to start work here or there, um, that wasn't quite how it worked out. And so I had to subordinate my thoughts, my expectations, and my ego and keep moving forward and keep staying positive till I found my place and I found my people.
That's great. I'm glad that you eventually found your people. I like to be the person that, for a lot of the people who are transitioning here, are student veterans at Rutgers. But our next question comes from Karen, who asks, how do you handle bad days? For instance, you're overloaded at work with tight deadlines, or there's a personal issue going on at home. How do you mentally get over those humps?
Um, I'll go back to the mantra of this is happening and I'm doing the best I can. Um, and you know that guy that I meet with at 7:45 every Monday, um, what what he has got me to believe is that we shouldn't expect every single day to be the easiest day in our lives. And so we ought to expect that there's going to be some type of challenge that comes our way, either expected or unexpected. So when it does come, I try not to be upset or surprised. I try to accept that it's going to happen, and then I just try to do the best I can, and then I try to prioritize. And so when three things come at me at the same time, I try to prioritize them as best I can, um, and make the best choices. There's only so much of you that you can give to any day or any situation. So you've got to quickly do the math on where is it that I can help the most? What is the most important thing? And then prioritize from there and limit the damage from others so that you can get back to those other things in the next day. So, and
Fantastic.
Margaret, before the
Yeah.
next comment, I want to comment on Peggy. Peggy put something in the chat, and I know we're trying to get to the Q&A, but glad you said it's okay to miss a day. Thank you. That's Peggy, I'm glad you picked up on that because so often we won't give ourselves the grace to keep going even if we miss a day. Like we're human beings, it's going to happen. If you like that sentiment, keep reading that Berkman book because the important thing is like if we think it's failing if we miss a day, it's like what do you do after you fail? That's where the measure of success comes. So thanks for noticing that. Sorry.
I made a mental note of that one as well, particularly thinking of, missing like a workout day. It's not like you stop going the next day, pick it right back up again. So good reminder. Okay, so let's see which one. I'm going back and forth to try to get everybody's in the order that
Sure.
they came in. And Noelle asked about mentors. Do you feel like having good mentors helps you be a better leader?
Wow. I have come to believe that everybody needs a somebody. And I've read it more than one time, like who is on your board of directors. And I it's more than a cliche. Um, I think it's incumbent on all of us to form our own informal board of directors because I think that life is so hard that we all need somebody to help us. And I- if you can form your own board of directors, somebody who can help you in various areas of your life, I think you're going to be a heck of a lot more productive. You're going to find creative solutions that you just can't find on your own. So, um, yeah, you can't go it alone. You can try and you're going to do okay, but you can do so much better if you can find those people that can help you. And then conversely, who else can you help? Um, the two books I recently read, they came, no, actually, one was a podcast from a basketball coach, and the other one was from Radley, who was the basketball coach. But they both said what coach would always say is at the end of it, what can I do for you? And so, yes, you should seek out mentors, but if you're in a position where you can be one, that is huge, I think. So,
That sounds like a resounding yes on the mentors, and I agree as well. Felicia has a question. And she's not the only person who is, I know we have a number of international attendees here. So is this advice universal or U.S. leader focused? Do you have advice for those managing global teams in different time zones and with different cultures?
Felicia, thank you. The best one of the best leadership lessons I ever learned was when I was assigned to a role in NATO, and it came to me later in my career. Um, and it involved working with, counterparts from 26 different countries at the time. And I was a hard driving traditional US naval officer. And so I remember once I went to the NATO headquarters and we were there to plan this exercise, this event. And a couple of my NATO colleagues who weren't from the US, I was there to visit. They said, "Hey, we're gonna go down we're gonna go down to the mess hall and we're gonna grab a cup of coffee. Would you like to join?" And I said, "No, you know what? I'm really busy. So why don't you go have your coffee and when you come back, we'll continue planning, okay?" And I did that once or twice or three times, and then I finally figured out that in certain cultures, that was how work and things got done. So what I would say is a lot of these things are universal. I think reading is, I think reflecting is, I think reaching out is, I think movement is, and rest. I do, but I also think that we need to be mindful as we step into other cultures, as we step into other time zones. We need to put ourselves in the position of the other people that we're working with, because if we don't, there's a lot that we're going to miss, um, and there's a lot of opportunities we're not going to be able to take advantage of because we've only looked at it from our perspective. So thanks for that.
All right. Our next question, I know you've recommended several books already, but Jody asks if you can recommend any additional books.
Um, I think I think it depends on where you are in your career. So maybe maybe you're in the middle of your career and you're about to make a transition where you're about to become a vice president. Or I remember when I was a captain, and they make people admirals. That's another transition. And so if you're there, there's books on how to make transitions, and a great one was "What Got You Here Won't Get You There" by Marshall Goldsmith. Um, so that's one book, depending on where you are in your particular point in your life. The Obstacle is the Way. I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday. I think that that's sort of a timeless book. Um, but then as you advance and you get towards, the next chapters of your life, um, David Brooks and The Second Mountain is another one. So I'm happy to share any recommendations, but I hesitate to say, oh, you should read this book if I don't exactly know where you are in the journey.
Well,
But those are a couple. Those are a
to
couple.
put Jody's question in a little bit of context, a second um, question from Jody was, how do you draw on these pillars in the moment when stress comes up during the workday? So I don't know if there's any way to tie those two questions of Jody's together. That what books would you potentially recommend for someone who's struggling with, probably not wanting to strangle someone during the day?
Sure. Um, so what I would say in those moments is there's going to be a stimulus, and there's a lot of times where we can't control what comes at us. But what we can control is how we respond to that stimulus. And what I've always tried to do is I've tried to expand that space between a stimulus and my response. And how do I do that? Um, I work backwards and I think about those 4 R's in an M. So Jody and I, in full disclosure, we worked together at one time. And so we can recount stressful moments that came upon us. But before that stressful moment happened, and before I was trying to expand that response time, you can better believe that I tried to get a good night's sleep the night before. You better believe that I had been speaking to mentors throughout the week to help me. You better believe I had read in the morning. You better believe that I had done my journaling and I had worked out before the day started. So I gave myself every possible chance to expand the response so that when that moment came, I was as prepared as I possibly could be, and I could do my best. Did I always do my best? I tried. And if I didn't, I tried to give myself grace to like get back up on the horse and try to do it again. So I hope that helped, Jodes. And the answer is it's these 4 R's and an M that give you that time and space to help on those stressful situations.
All right. Our next question is, and I love this one because I think there's more people um, that this probably impacts because Lane asks, can you speak a bit more on the importance of leadership, even for those who are not in a position of authority or management in their organization?
Yeah. Uh, I'll say it in a colloquial or familiar tone. Like I I never believed you don't need no stinking org chart to be a leader. Um, I think it first starts with yourself. You've got to lead yourself before you can lead anybody else. And there's ways that you can lead organizations that don't require you sitting at the top of a massive org chart. Um, there's ways that you can lead from behind. and it's by your personal example. So um, I think it's great when people who are just beginning in their careers are starting to think in those terms, because you don't need to wait until you get to be more senior. There are things that you can do right now, and there are ways that you can think about yourself that can get you started on that journey. Because sometimes if we wait for that big org chart and all those people underneath, it may not happen. But if you start right now thinking, hey, I can be that person, and hey, it starts with me, things happen really quickly. And again, don't rely on the boxes, rely on who you are. And, power can come from an org chart, but it can also come from your ability to get things done, your ability to lead, and your ability to perform in pressure situations. So start young, see yourself that way, and just keep freaking going.
I love it. Influence and, you know, project management, lots of ways for people to do that if they're not in a formal position of leadership.
Yeah.
Um, our next question is going to require you to maybe go to that little bit of a 30,000-foot view. What do you think will be the biggest challenges for leadership worldwide in the next 10 years?
Um, I think there's a challenge and I think there's an opportunity. The challenges, we're going to be distracted in ways that perhaps we don't understand. I think it's already happening now. There's so many things that compete for our attention, and I think over the next 10 years that is only going to increase. So it's, that last slide where I said, hey, where can you create the space? I think it's going to be harder and harder to create that space for you to do the 4 R's and an M. That's the challenge. But here's where I see the opportunity. Um, I think the most popular two letters in the English language right now are AI. Um, and I think that it's going to become a force for good. I think it's going to revolutionize a lot of industry, but I also think that if you're focused on leadership, there's always going to be room for that human connection. So if I'm an aspiring leader, I would be really excited about the opportunities that you have if you understand and can harness the technology, and you can be the type of leader that can make human connections and make sense of all of it. I don't think that's going away, and I don't want to live in a world where it is. So I hope that helps.
That's great. Thank you. Next question for you. Can your leadership concept apply to all types of situations? Example, during a period we had like COVID.
A situation like COVID, I think again, challenge opportunity. The opportunity with COVID was that if you were like, a few of us were in healthcare at the time. And so all of those sort of distractions and all of those uh, competitions for resources and some of the bickering, like it all went away because there was an existential threat that we all faced, or a challenge that we had to work on together. So I think in that way, COVID was a great opportunity to lead, because all the other unimportant stuff sort of went away. And it was about, in our case, like, how could you, as quickly as possible, develop tests to help create a healthier world? Um, so that was the challenge, or that was the opportunity. The challenge is, with something like COVID, you really kind of had to double down on leadership, because we became disconnected. And when you become disconnected, you start to become isolated. And all of those thoughts can creep in um, when you're disconnected. Do they value me? Is what I do important? So, what I found during COVID is that you had to try double and triple time you had to double down or triple down on making sure the team was connected and that they felt valued because when we got isolated, um, the team could fray if you didn't really put additional effort into making sure that we stuck together. As Franklin said, we either hang together or we hang separately. So in those times like COVID, we needed to make sure we hung together.
Indeed, yes. Um, Lisa asks, is it important to have a business network and a personal network consisting of friends and family, and while using a more formal communication for business networks to check in often?
Um, I think so, Lisa. There are questions that I might ask of a business mentor. There are topics that I might talk about with a business mentor that I may put off, I may take off the table with that individual. Um, I can think of, close conversations I've had with close friends about things like parenting that I may not talk about with a business mentor. So, yeah, and what's the right answer, Lisa, on your board of directors? I think it's whatever works for you. So, you may need a couple people to help you on like, hey, how should I progress in my career? You may need people to help you on, hey, how can I be the best version of myself as a friend or a spouse or a parent? Um, and for some of us, it may be like, hey, I may need a couple role models to help me become the best version of myself as an athlete. And athlete takes on many forms. Maybe that's like, hey, I need somebody to help me run a 5K, or I may need somebody to help me become a better tennis player, whatever that is. So yeah, I do think there's a little bit of separation that needs to happen as you put your team together.
Great. Um, Rod has a comment and combined with the question here, I think. Um, Your philosophy is clearly informed by a concern for those in your sphere of influence. Do you have any observations on what appears to be a decline over recent decades in people's empathy and investment in others' happiness?
Thanks, Rod. And um, for those of you looking for a book to read, Rod's book on widgets is phenomenal. I think what you're getting at is why seminars like this and why talking about leadership is so important, and that is um, productivity and efficiency is leading to um, there's less time people might think to invest in those conversations, to find out how people are doing, to invest in their own development, to ask those simple questions that you recommend people doing of like taking them on a coffee break and just asking how they are doing. Um, yeah, there's the business world is encroaching on those opportunities, but it's the good leader who knows that those situations are paramount. And those are the situations that make leaders great leaders. And it's the kind of thing that teams yearn for. And it's the reason why people stay with teams. And it's also the reason why people leave teams. Um, yeah, so you got to take the time, even though it does get harder and harder.
All right, we're coming into the home stretch. Second to last question for you. Ah, just as I was saying that, someone added a question. We'll get to as many as we can. But this one says, what are the upcoming changes you see in years to come as social media is defining new ways of things?
Um, I think I think we all need to be mindful of what it is that we're putting into our heads and what we're feeding ourselves. Um, I'm beginning to think that our brains are a lot like our bodies, and so If we're putting just anything into our body as we're putting just anything into our brains, um, Katie bar the door because we may not know what we're going to get on the other side of that. So um, I think we need to be very mindful of curating what it is that we're putting into our social media feeds. I think we need to be careful about how much time we're putting into our feeds. And I think we need to be okay with not feeling the need to keep up with every single thing that's happening in the moment. Because what that does is it takes away the time that we have to reflect on the things that are more longer lasting. So be careful with what you're putting in your feed and then how much time you're spending on it. What I find is the less I'm on it, the better I'm doing. And I can also see when I hear people, I can hear outlets and you can almost see what's in their feed. And I don't want to be that person. I want to be somebody who's putting the right things in so the right things come out.
Yeah, that might be another time for use of that timer that you talked about earlier about,
Yeah.
stay writing for 20 minutes, maybe set that same timer, but stop looking at the feed after that amount of time. I'm going to combine these last two questions because they both reference mentors. So it's going to seem like a big, long question, but should you change or keep the same mentors? How long should you stick with a mentor? And um, how do you kind of approach someone to be your mentor?
To the first part, I think um, our needs change over time. Um, I think there are people who um, I needed as my kids were growing up. There were a lot more people that I spoke to about tips and ideas and people that were going through the same experiences that I was as our kids were developing. Now that they're older, those needs have changed, and um, there's things that I'm focused on that are different than say was that I was 10 years ago. Um, so yeah, I think mentors will evolve over time depending on where you are in your journey. And when it comes to mentors, um, I'll say two things. Number one, the burden of forming that board of directors is on you. Um, and the second thing I would say is don't underestimate how much people want to help you. Um, if there's somebody that you look up to and that you respect and that you think could help you, there's a really good chance that that person to get to that position was helped by somebody else. And more often than not, that person is going to feel a debt of gratitude to those who helped him or her. They can't they can't pay those people back, but they can pay it forward. And so please, please, please. Like I had a Rutgers NROTC student. Apparently they saw this announcement. And they're like, hey, can we connect? I can't go on this webinar, but can we connect? And so um, I don't know this person, but I'm going to talk to him at 8 o'clock because he's asked for help. Somebody help me. So yeah, don't underestimate if you just reach out. So how are you going to build your network? Maybe you send one email today, see what happens. Um, I think you'll be surprised with how willing people are to help you. So hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Denny. Thanks to everyone for having great questions. And probably my doing that NROTC is aware of your presence with us today. Great, great folks over there. So, in closing, I'd like to thank you, Denny, and our audience as well. We had a great amount of questions that were really, thoughtful and insightful. Um, we conduct our our webinars on Fridays at noon Eastern time, and people can get more information about that. We'll be sharing it with all of you who registered for the webinar, but you can also visit our webpage. It's a long one, business.rutgers.edu/alumni/lifelong-learning. Hence, it's good to register and get that sent to you via email. And if you actually scroll to the next slide, they can see two places you can see previous recordings of previous webinars. And then we also try to get them on the calendar for forthcoming webinars. As you log off today, you will see a brief 3-question survey about today's event. One of those questions is a free form field that you can type in subjects and or speakers you'd like to have featured in future webinars. We want our series to continue to meet your needs, so we value that feedback. And finally, as I mentioned when our webinar began earlier, and I think I mentioned it once or twice during as well, a link to the archived recording of this presentation will be shared via social media and emailed to everyone, and it will also be on the Business Insights page of our website, along with the recordings of previous virtual Lunch and Learns. So thank you, Denny. Thank you to our great audience, and we'll see everyone again soon. Bye for now.